If you've never tuned in to our recordings for talking about children's books written by Nigerian authors, this is one you really don't want to miss. We've tried to categorize children's picture books from the ages of 7 and below as classical. You want to know what titles we've come up with? Do you want to know if we've even got classical titles for children's literature? Then this is one you don't want to miss out on. See you there. It's true. It can help you reflecting in the writing process, but it's not up to an author to decide on whether their book is a classic.
Will be a classic.
Not.
Yeah.
Because for starters, there's the issue of time. You know, it's got to weather the test of time. It's got to appeal, you know, to a large readership. There's got to be a demand for it even after it's gone out of print. So when it goes out of print, are people asking for the book to be reprinted? You know, so all those things, but we can look at what makes a classical children's book. And that's why I brought
And a surprise.
And a surprise into the room today. What makes this a classical? The first thing is the vibrancy of the illustrations, the repetitive phrase that goes all the way through. And so it's predictable, and children love predictability. Think about Eric Carle. You know, think about The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Well, children know what's coming next. Children like repetition. It helps them, you know, be part of the story. So you really want to draw children in. I like the fact that it's animals, and children love relating to animals, you know. And at the end of the day, this is a classical children's picture book. You know, we can study models because and bring them into our culture, and I think that's what Polly.
I like it, Jim.
Yes, that's what she does as well. There's that repetitive phrase all the way through her books. How are we getting on, everyone? What have you brought into the room?
Okay, hi everyone. What have I brought to the room? It's written by Lola Shone and illustrated by Francis Blake. Why I chose it as the classic is because Mayo and the Masquerade was first published by Kasafai Republic Press in 2010. And this is 2022, right? So that's like 12 years ago. It's gone out of print several times, I'm sure about that. And it's still in circulation, and it's still in high demand as well. Okay, so it has lots of elements that I love. And the fact that children can relate with it. There are times, what for me, part of being something a classic is being relatable, something a child would love to read. It has lots of pictures, and it's not wordy.
Okay.
So,
okay. Goodness, what would you say about that?
Okay, that should be actually my list there, the Mayowa and the Masquerade. I also like to see the classic, like you said, it's over 10 years, and it's about Nigerian culture. Like, you can't talk about Nigeria and not talk about Masquerade. The Westerners know about Masquerade, the Easterners know about Masquerade. So the Masquerade here is the one aspect of Nigerian culture that the book portrays, and also the play. Like the book talks about the play in the western part of Nigeria. That's it.
Yes.
No, yeah, I wanted to add that one of the elements also that makes a book classic is when you look at the book over time, irrespective of the years, you see the quality of, you see the same quality of pictures, you see the quality of the content. When you look at those elements, you see that the book is still attractive to either the children that used like 10 years ago, it still has the same appeal to children that are using it presently. So for me, that's what part of what makes something classic for me.
I brought a couple of books based on the fact that they have been around for a while. and some based on the fact that they will stand the test of time at the end of the day, because they are relevant now and will be relevant tomorrow. So let me start with this. So first of all, the first question I had when I looked at this book was, this is Busy Forest, Quiet River by Polly Alakijan. And it ends up being, it turns out that this is sort of like non-fiction, because it's not a story in itself. It's like it's telling us about the rainforest, which is real to us in Nigeria and West Africa. So I went to do some research to find out if there are classic non-fiction books, and I found out that they are. So, and when we're looking at the scope of this, we didn't even think about non-fiction, but there's actually classic non-fiction. So I thought that was interesting. So it's basically just a picture book that goes through the rainforest and introduces children to the rainforest in West Africa. Easy Forest, and it's very old. It's a Reading World series. It's very, 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 very old. And any child today will the knowledge of the rainforest will be relevant to a child today as it was many years ago when this book was made. Then there's also Ayo and His Pencil. Ifeoma Okoye is the very popular author who has written some books. Those Eze books that we talked about yesterday were written by the same author, Ifeoma Okoye. So this one also is really very old. It's a very simple book for early readers about Ayo and the pencil he lost. But it's also, the setting is in a school, which children can relate to. He loses his pencil in school, and it almost feels like he's going to get into trouble because he can't go home without his pencil, which it happens today. It's the same feeling that a lot of children will experience. Those feelings they will experience today if they lose something that's valuable and they have to go home and they are jittery and all of that. So this is Ayo and His Pencil by Ifeoma Okoye. It's an early reader, simple story, simple pictures, great representation too in it.
Let's have a look at
then
that.
I brought, this one?
Yes. The inside.
Ayo and His Pencil. Okay. So he's crying because he's looking for his pencil.
Thank
He
you.
eventually finds it though. Yeah. Okay, then I wanted to talk about this one because I think that Ifeoma Oyefolu's books are books that we haven't really, really explored. She has so many titles. A is for Africa. Her books just introduce you to Africa, basically. Whoever you are, it basically introduces you to African tradition and culture and place as well. So this one is about African games. So basically, this is a book that tells us about all those games we used to play. Those ones that we drop seeds. All those African games that we used to play. Yes, Ayo. All those African games we used to play when we were young. So it basically tells a story about a girl introducing these games to her friends, and she uses real life pictures, which is why I like her book. So these are pictures that probably from her childhood and how they used to play the game. So they're real life pictures to show how the games work. And it's a story. It's not like it's a book of games, like explaining what games are. It's actually a story, but in the story, she incorporates how these games are played. I really like how she uses real pictures. It's like pictures of real people. That's what she uses in her books. And she has so many titles that I think that we should be on the lookout for, because every single one of her titles will teach you more about African culture and traditions and Nigerian, because she grew up in the East. So she's mainly she represents Nigeria mostly in her stories.
Oh,
and then this one is not old. This one is not old, but I really like Atinike's books. I think that Atinike's books will stand the test of time. Eventually, this is 2017, so it's really not old. But this book is about a baby who goes to the market. What's in it for me is the food. So there's chin in the market. There's coconut. I buy Atinike's books for my nieces who are not in Nigeria, because I think that books like this help them to stay in touch. So the fruits that people are hawking in the markets are shown in the stories. Chin, those kind of things that they are not used to seeing now, but they are not used to seeing because of where they are, but they need to know because they're Nigerians, you know. So I think I chose this not because it's an old book, but I think that it will stand the test of time because it will be relevant for a very, very long time. So that's all.
So for me, I was quite tough looking for a book to fit all the descriptions, the classical, African, Nigerian, and the at a library. And I borrowed it and I read it. I don't think it's available for purchase. I don't think most of these books are available anymore.
That's true.
Back in the day, that was what was happening, but times have changed. So, just like some of the textbooks that we use in school, some children, they still use the textbooks that were back in the day, books that used to talk about things that are non-existent now, and, we need to change with time. We cannot stay, stuck in the past. But the book I'm going to talk about, a potential classic, is, okay, so it's upon ABC. It's written by Shade Padipe, yours truly, and why I would call it a classic is it was actually printed or published in 2016, so it hasn't stayed for 10 years really. But I think it's a really fun and quirky book for children. I mean, it talks about the ABCs in the African way, and I think that this is a book that should, every child should have in their library. I mean, I like the fact that every page there's a mystery. Every page is relating to something. It talks about a visit to the village. I mean, that's quite popular. And, nowadays, we don't see many children going back to their villages. And, it's something that was very enjoyable back in the day. So, I mean, it's something that parents should think about bringing back and giving their children that experience. And if they can't have that experience, they can have the experience when they read books like this, So reading a book and then checking on every page. I like the fact that you can actually relate for letter C. I'm looking at it. I can see camera. I can see car. I can see different things that start with letter C. So I actually found that this was really, really, really interesting. And I think that, over time, it will become more in demand, more children, more schools will see it as something that they want to share and a book that they want their children to, pick up to learn about the ABCs, because it talks about the letters A to Z, completely African, not the A for apple that we always do, What's A here for us? A for Adana. Okay, A for Africa, Africa, let's put some African into what we do. We can't always be following the other way. So, yes, so this is the book I picked. And 10 years from now, it will be definitely a classic book.
I agree that it will stand the test of times. And then one thing I think that I want to add is, for me, it's when I look at it, I look at like this is like an African peekaboo. So in future, if you look at to do something that will make it even more contemporary, or styles of teaching or learning that you want to make it applicable to them, maybe like a fun activity now, just do for them the peekaboo version of it. Where you see the camera side, or where do you see? Is he hidden somewhere? There's a lot you can do to this book to expand it. I see it has lots of potential. And as time goes on, where we know that African culture is being appreciated and it's being loved all over the world, I think there's a lot we can do with this book. It's an amazing book.
Thank you. Okay.
I have Mayowa and the Masquerade. One of the speakers have done that, and also the one the baby goes to the market. Then another one I think that would make it to be a classical book is the Idea of the Benin Kingdom. I don't know if anybody has seen or read that book. It brought out the ancient Benin Kingdom, like it told the story for the younger ones to read and understand, and it told it in a kind of the Moana way. We can call it the African Moana story or something like that. So it talked about the the children believing. Okay, yes, just that one. Yes. So believing in their dreams and believing in one's culture, practicing one's culture, and things like that. I think yes. That's good. That's good. So, and I like the attire they used. They brought in the Benin Kingdom attire, the Nigerian kind of setting, the Nigerian attire. So for those people that have never seen or they've not seen how the Benin Kingdom their attire or their dresses, they would be privileged to see and say, "Oh, is this how they dressed back in the day?" So that book, it's okay.
So there's
then
something
another
about.
book.
So it looks as if there's something about
Okay,
history.
go ahead.
There's something about history that seems to be coming back with these with the classical.
Yes.
Okay, carry on. Sorry.
Okay. Another book on my list here is The Chicken in the Kitchen. The Chicken in the Kitchen. It's a book about about the Eastern Nigeria, like the New Yam Festival.
Okay.
Yes, it's a book.
Author, name of the author.
I can't really remember.
Neddy, I think it's Neddy Okorafor.
Oh.
Okay.
Yes,
Neddy.
Is it okay? Is it Neddy or Nelly? Neddy. Okay, Neddy. Okay,
Yes.
so it's a book about the. Yes, I know Neddy. So it's the Eastern culture of yam festivals and all of that, like telling the children what the yam culture, like the one we do every August, what it's all about and what it represents.
Yes. Have you got that title, Farida?
I think that's it.
No, I read it. I read a soft copy on Epic.
Would you?
We don't have copies. It's not distributed here, so it's something that we have to order.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for that contribution. Thank you. And I like how some of the titles that you've mentioned, and you had, so they didn't know that you'd submitted those titles to me either. So I'm glad that that came up again.
I have Chicken and the River. I consider this a classic. It was first published in 1966. I learned from Wikipedia. You have to check that out yourself. But it says that Chinua Achebe got the inspiration to start writing for children when his daughter went to nursery school or preschool, and he discovered that the books she was reading were all books that were foreign, titles. And so he got the inspiration to start writing books. I read it with my 7-year-old son and my 4-year-old daughter as a series nighttime bedtime story. And I think they kind of related with the story of the character having a goal and trying to achieve that goal and what could go wrong, as he tries to do that.
Okay.
What I like about it also is that it helped us to reference history in a fictional way. And I could go further with my children by looking for pictures, to show them how things would have looked at that time. So I really appreciate that about books. And I think part of the life then that we don't do now, I think was easily explained to the children. So they would ask, do children still receive koboko in schools? And I could explain that easily, that no, in most schools now, in many schools now in Nigeria, most schools now in Nigeria, children wouldn't receive koboko at school. So I think books that are different from the way we do culture nowadays are good talking points for children. And I also have quickly this one, which I think is a potential classic, The Greatest Animal in the Jungle. I think it has a folktale type of quality to it. And I think that's why it could stand the test of time. And it has that folktale, what's the moral of the story at the end, you know, which is basically love yourself the way you are. You don't need to change to be anybody else to be more acceptable. Well, that's the moral of the story.
Okay. Fantastic. I think we've done, considering that this was a difficult task for us all, I think we've done justice to the topic. I think the one thing we can all do now is continue to think, what makes a classical children's books? I think we've established that. The appeal, the demand, so appeal, demand. Does it come across as a folklore? Does it give us insight to history? Is it something that does it pass down knowledge from one generation to the other? What is the appeal? The question Farida asked earlier on is, you know, that authors might want to study classics so that they know, you know, so that they're fully aware of their content when they start writing, and they have a, you know, so they're writing with intention. Do I want longevity, or do I just want, is it just a flash story, you know, or do I want it for longevity? You asked me what I was bringing into the room. So these books by A.F. Odunjo, I'm being told, were the books that were being read in most public primary schools in Nigeria are storybooks. So even though they didn't have picture books for one particular story, they come as funny because it's actually got my daughter's name on it, which means that they're still being used till today in Nigeria. Illustration for story. There's another story, and there's a particular one that was very similar to Ebele's games, and it talks about the different games that are being played but all in Yoruba language. And my question was, if these were how stories were being told in the Yoruba language in the 60s, then obviously there would have been books like this in Igbo, in Hausa, in the other major languages in which children's stories were being shared with children. So we have, our parents did have a repertoire of stories, but they just did not come in the format of a picture book like what we have today. So literature has evolved, and readership would always be in demand. So what we're doing here, what we do on a monthly basis, is always going to be in demand. And I want to say, you know, kudos to all the research that you've put into this, the detective work that we've put into it in helping us define potential classic children's books, and yeah, well done. That's
really enlightening. I mean, I just found out about a new book that I really think, oh wow, this is actually really good, you know. So I love that we're doing this, and yeah, it has potentials. Thank you very much, Ms. Fadike, and thank you everyone for always joining in and, you know, doing this together. Fantastic. Well done, everyone.
So just echoing what you said, this is great. I think even though they are not, we're not able to find a billion classics, but this conversation is the starting point, which I think is great.
I always jump at any opportunity to talk about books, especially children's books, and I love the preparation leading up to this, and the debates we had are fun. I'm looking forward to more episodes, and I can't wait to hear the feedback that feedback from viewers who would benefit from this, just to see how it's helping children, writers, schools, those kinds of people.
My last words, parents, every one of us, let's keep pushing because I know when we push, we will get what we want. Keep pushing it out there. Intentionality. Books are still like the shortcut to greatness. So in every way, we shouldn't leave any aspects of the books, the positive aspects of genres behind. That's the last.
One of the things that Goodness said on our site, because I can tell that her internet is playing up, is that when we look at the classics that are called the classics, the Western books, we can see that they've been, the covers evolve. So they don't maintain the same book cover that they had when those books were back then. So the book cover has an appeal. So if we can evolve with book covers, if we can bring those books back with fresh covers, with fresh formatting, with, you know, abridged versions, in which some versions, so for instance, Essay Goes to School, which is a mini chapter book, if you bring it back to like a picture book, you know, or an illustrated, colorful picture book, you know, that might have its own appeal, you know. Or if the language, because if some editing can be done to the language such that it's toned down a bit, for the morale of the story, the essence of the story is maintained, obviously with copyrights in place, then we're still preserving the content. So there's something that we can do, you know, there's something that we can do to preserve these stories and to make them more relevant to our children. We also want to make sure that we're looking at content, we're looking at illustration, and we're making sure that illustrations do not send messages that we are not sending. Yeah,
I think so. This is a wake-up call for authors. I don't know how succession of books, maybe to the next generation, is done in terms of children and all that. But I think it's a wake-up call that so that in some years to come, there's a way that there's a preservation of these classics so they don't die, and that's the truth. Because I know that abroad there are museums, there are different ways by which some of these artifacts are passed and they're taken care of, and that's the truth. And I think the older some antiques are, the more expensive they are.
And you know, when Temiloluwa was talking about history, museums, you can go to the Roald Dahl Museum today and your child can have an activity there and look at illustrations blown up and exhibited, you know, and something is so important that was covered here, the preservation of history and passing down of culture.
So I want to appreciate all the research that you've done, the efforts, and I can't wait for the 7 pluses. Whoop, 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 whoop. Can't wait for that. Thank you for being here and see you soon.
Okay, bye everyone. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.